Hey folks, today we'll learn how to write polyfill for map method in JavaScript. But before getting started, first let me tell you what a polyfill is. So polyfill is basically a piece of JavaScript code that we write to fill in some functionality that a browser might support but another browser might not support. So let me reiterate. So polyfill is a piece of JavaScript code that we write to fill in some functionality that a specific browser might already support but another browser might not support. So let me give you an example. So let's say we use the map method in our code, and obviously we want our code to run on all the browsers. But let's assume that the Internet Explorer does not provide support for the map method, or it does not know what a map is. Okay, so in this scenario our code will execute properly on Chrome or Mozilla, but in case of Internet Explorer our code will break. So in order to avoid this scene, or in order to avoid our code from breaking, what we do is we write a piece of code to replace the map functionality specifically for Internet Explorer. So what happens is, in case of Mozilla or Chrome, the actual map method will execute, and in case of Internet Explorer the code that we wrote will get executed instead of the map method, because it doesn't know what a map is. Okay, so yeah, this is how polyfill works. And there are some important polyfills that are asked in interviews, and one of those polyfills happen to be this map method. So yeah, let's write it. Let's code it out now. Okay, so let me take an array. Let's call it num arr, and I'll just take some random numbers here. Okay, so yeah, this is our array, and let me show you one thing. If let's say I simply console this array, what we get. So if I console this array and if I expand it out, in this prototype you can see there are various methods that we could apply on an array, such as map, filter, reduce, concat, push, and yeah, everything that you can apply on an array are being provided by this prototype. And here you can also find the map method. Here it is. Here it is. Since this map method is being present in the arrays prototype, we are able to use the map method. Otherwise we won't be able to use map method. So let me just let me give you an example and use the map method. So what we'll do is we'll just double each of the elements of the array and return a new array. So you guys must know that map returns a new array. Okay, like what? So what map actually does is, whatever the callback function is provided by the developer, it passes each and every element of the array through that callback function and returns a new array. So let's just console the new array. Okay, so what is the error that we are getting? Okay, so we have to first do this. So yeah, new array is equals to this map, and we are getting new array here. Okay, so it is working fine. Each and every element of the array is being doubled, but as I just showed you, this is working because we have this map method present in the prototype of the array. So let me show you something. If I do this, array dot prototype dot map is equals to null. Okay, now if I simply console log this array, this num arr that you can see in line number 1, if I simply console log it and open its prototype, you can see in map there is nothing, there is null. So why I did this? I did this to simulate a scenario where we don't have access to map or where a browser doesn't recognize what map is. If your browser doesn't recognize what map is, you don't have to write this line number 3, because I only wrote this to simulate the scenario where we don't have access to map or where a browser doesn't know what map is. Okay, but if you have been asked this question to write polyfill for map, do write this whole code that I am writing now, because you have to first make a case where the map is null or like non-accessible or like doesn't exist at all. So yeah, so now since you see the map is null, see this new array, let's see what we are getting now. You can see we are getting error here saying num arr dot map is not a function. We are applying map on this num arr, but now it no longer recognizes this map function. Why? Because in line number 2 we set its value to null. That is why now it's not working. Previously we saw that it was working, but now it's not, because we set its value to null, the map's value to null in the arrays prototype. Okay, now let me just remove all of this. Okay, now since map is null, I have to write my own map, so let's do it. So I'll say if map is null, array dot prototype dot map. So if map is null, then do something, but this do something which I wrote in the this if block won't execute, because if map is null, then this value will be false, and if it's false, the whatever the code we wrote inside the if block won't execute. Hence I use this operator, this not operator. So if map is null or the map doesn't exist, this piece of code will get executed. And what this piece of code is, this is the code that we write to provide the functionality of map. So let's do that. So we'll say, okay, if map is null or map doesn't exist, what I want to do is I want to have my own map in arrays prototype. So let's have our own map in arrays prototype. So I'll do array dot prototype dot my map equals to, and this will be a function obviously. Okay, now think what map takes as input. Map takes a callback function as input. So that callback function could be anything. So let me just write a map so that you guys could see in parallel. I'll do simply item, and here, although it won't run since what? Since our map is null, but still. Okay, so yeah, this is a callback function that map took. It can be anything. Here we are just doubling a number, it could be multiplying a number by 3 or anything else for that matter. So let's write simply callback here, and what we'll do is, since map iterates over each and every element of the array, we use for loop here. To do that, you can use simple for loop. I am using for of here because we only need the elements, we don't need the index. So yeah, so for let item of this. So here this will refer to the array that we want to iterate over. Okay, but if you don't know how this works, I have made a video on this keyword. You can go ahead and watch it, but first watch this video till completion, and yeah, you can understand this very easily even if you don't know what this means. So you could just think of it like think of it like we are getting access to the array by using this keyword, no? So yeah, if you know how, if you want to know how, or obviously you should want to know how. So yeah, if you wanted to do that, so just go ahead and watch my video on this keyword. Okay, so yeah, here it is for loop. Now since map returns a new array, let me have a new array with the name result. Okay, so that what I am thinking is, map returns a new array, so we'll return this array. First I'll destructure it, and initially it doesn't contain anything. Then what I'll do is I'll pass my item, which is the element of the array, through the callback function, and whatever the result is, I'll append it into this result array. So you understood, no, the logic? So every time an element is being passed through the callback function and being appended at the back of the result array. Again, the another element, the next element will be passed through the callback function and will be appended to the results array. And finally, what we'll do, we'll simply return this result array. So yeah, that's it. That's all we wanted to do. Now let's see if it's working. Okay, it's not working. Why is it so? Because here we are still using map, and here we have this array, that my map in the prototype, no? So yeah, so let me show you one thing first. Let me show you one thing really quick. Now if I now if I console log this num arr, you can see, can you see anything? You can see, just a minute. Yes, you can see my map here. See, we wrote this callback function my map. We just made this my map inside the arrays prototype, no? So yeah, so now we can use my map instead of map, and it will work fine. So since we just saw this map is no more working, you can say my map here, and it will work. Okay, so yeah, so what we have to do is, I'll just say const new arr is equals to this thing, and I'll just console.log new arr, and yes, you can see it's working. We are getting the right result. Okay, in the console it's working. So yeah, we could have anything here, any callback function, like I can even multiply it by 9, and we are getting the correct result in the console. And one more thing, although I used my map here, it is just to show that you can you can make any function and get it into arrays prototype. Just to show you that we could simply use the if, like, think logically. If you have used map everywhere in your code, the map function will execute. When it comes to Internet Explorer, it will see, okay, so we don't have to write this line in that scenario. It will automatically see, okay, so map doesn't exist here. So it will say, okay, then I have to run whatever is being written inside the if block. And instead of my map, we could simply name it map. And then here it doesn't recognize my map. So yeah, so inside the if block it will see, okay, so now I have to append this map to the arrays prototype, and whatever the map we wrote inside our code, that will also work for the Internet Explorer, because it will assume this because in the scenario of Internet Explorer, it will assume that the map represents this function, this thing. And in the case of Chrome and Mozilla, it will assume that map is being provided by the JavaScript itself. So it will think of that map, and in the case of Internet Explorer, it will think of this map, because in the case of Internet Explorer, this doesn't array.prototype.map doesn't exist. So yeah, so hence this map will come into picture. So yeah, so we could write map here also, and now you can see, yes, if I execute this code, it will be executed correctly. So yeah guys, that's all. That's how we write the polyfill for map function. If you gained anything from this video, I'll really appreciate if you could subscribe to my channel, and I'll also appreciate it if you could comment something down, or maybe just like this video, because it will bump up my videos in the YouTube algorithm. So yeah, that's all from my side, and we'll meet next time.